I'm Alicia.
And I'm Liam. We both have OCD. And instead of spiraling alone, we decided to turn our symptoms into a podcast. You're welcome.
Here, we overshare real stories, laugh through the anxiety, and talk to actual experts who can explain why your brain keeps asking, what if I accidentally marry my cousin?
Whether your thing is hand washing, mental rituals, or just silently panicking during normal conversations, congrats. You have found your people.
This is a safe place. Unless you're an intrusive thought, in which case, get in line, buddy. We're booked.
So grab a weighted blanket, cancel your plans for the 5th time, and let's dive in. This is the OCD Confessional.
And yes, we did check this recording 4 times before uploading it.
Today on the OCD Confessional, we are joined by Ryan Judd, Clinical Director of the OCD Institute Texas, a residential treatment program specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Ryan is a clinician who works with people at some of the most severe points in their OCD, and he's also lived through OCD and anxiety himself. That combination of lived experience and clinical expertise gives him a unique perspective on what actually helps people recover. He is especially passionate about cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure and response prevention, and about challenging the idea that OCD is something people just have to live with forever. We're really excited to talk with him today about what OCD actually is, what causes it, what doesn't, and what real recovery can look like. So Ryan, welcome to the OCD Confessional.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
We're so excited to chat with you, Ryan. We start every episode off with a confession. Is there anything you would like to confess today?
An OCD confession.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's something kind of silly and funny. I guess when I was looking back now, recognizing that I actually probably had OCD definitely a lot earlier than I knew before I knew what it was. But when I was in school, I would get very distracted very easily. But I wanted to pay attention, especially when it was something that wasn't interesting. But I would have these thoughts like, oh, if I bumped my knee against the desk, I needed to bump it on the other side. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about it. And my fear was like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to pay attention if I don't, figure this out, make this thought go away, make this feeling go away. But then I would get so wrapped up in like, well, maybe I have to bump it two times because that's a better number, or 4 times because that's a better number. And then, of course, you guys know what happens next, right? I'm like totally not paying attention and actually making the thing I was worried about happen through the ritual
Right.
process. Yeah, and it was like took me a long time before I figured out like, oh yeah, this is actually making it way worse. But yeah.
Did you have any special numbers that you were using when you would do that? Like, oh, I had to be 2 and then 2, or what was your
3, 5, and 7 were like good numbers. They felt complete, but then again, it was always like most of the time they felt complete. But then what if they didn't feel complete? Then I had to figure out another number, and it was
Now, I'm just going to be honest. I hate 3, 5, and 7 because they're not even. They're not even, Ryan. You need symmetry.
yeah, and that's so interesting because what I was looking for was like a symmetrical feel, but 3, 5, and 7 felt that way to me. Isn't that's weird, right? OCD
That
weird.
is, yeah. Is that one of the first things you noticed show up? And what are some other subtypes and things that you
Actually,
noticed?
it's a great, yeah. The first, if I think back to the earliest like true OCD moment I had, I was really young, and I remember this is so bizarre, it's so weird, but that's how OCD works.
It's also weird. Yeah.
I remember like some adult, maybe an uncle or something, talking about having chapped lips, and he was like, "Oh, my lips are so chapped, I could die," or something like dramatic like that, like a mention of death. And then I started thinking like, what if I lick my lips and then someone dies? Which again
You
makes no sense,
attach.
but yeah, it was a bit
Yeah.
magical. And then I was so afraid. I was like watching myself, don't lick your lips, because what if you do that and you know that could happen and then somebody could die? And I was terrified of this. And I think I was really young because I eventually I went and told my mom, and she was like, that's ridiculous, right? And I was like, yeah, but what if? And she was like, Ryan, lick your lips, like you're fine. And I was like, no. But yeah, that was probably the earliest I remember of being terrified that something like that was going to happen, and not knowing how to make it stop.
Did she get you to lick your lips?
I think she did. Yeah, I think that's what probably put it to bed. Was she was like, lick your lips, do it, and I did, and then was like, okay.
Yeah, she was doing ERP and didn't even know it.
way ahead of her time with that. Yeah.
Right.
And how did things go from there for you? That was your first sign that it might be there. Were there other subtypes that emerged? How did your OCD
Well,
go from there?
yeah, it would kind of come up and down. I think there were periods where it didn't really bother me, and then or I'd have these kind of things about numbers and tapping, but I was kind of always able to uh, get distracted with something more important like school or activities or friends or stuff. But I really had more of a social anxiety problem growing up. Like that was even maybe bigger. The thing that bothered me more, I was always kind of anxious about other people and their perception of me and feeling awkward and worried and replaying conversations and avoiding things throughout like a lot of middle school and high school. And so OCD maybe just was like in the background, not super there, which is probably why I never really realized that I'd had it until my mid 20s, and that's when it got really, really awful and really, really bad.
Do you think people suffer with anxiety because of their OCD?
It's a good question. So I'm actually the DSM. You guys have probably heard of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is where we get all these disorders from. It's kind of like the Bible in the world of mental health and treatment. And actually, in the previous version of the DSM, and DSM-4, OCD was listed under the anxiety disorders category. And I think there are a lot of good reasons for that. And then they kind of took it out. In the newest version, it's now its own thing. It's got its own chapter. It's its own classification of disorders, and there's some rationale for that too. But yeah, I think OCD and anxiety kind of play on some of the same, brain circuitry, and they can kind of like collude with one another to make your life miserable. And we often do see people with OCD. We know that they're more likely to have another additional anxiety disorder, and vice versa. We know there's probably something around an anxious temperament. Like you guys have kids, I think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
So
both have two.
there you go. And which one of the two, you could probably very easily say which one has a more anxious temperament than the other.
We each have one.
There you go, right? And most families do. It's interesting. And even if they're not truly clinically anxious, there's always one that's going to be further on the anxious spectrum than the other, right?
Hmm.
And it's just kind of interesting how, same genetics, or mostly same genetics, same environment, but you have some children that are just born with a more anxious temperament and predisposition than others. Some are risk takers by nature. They're very, nothing feels dangerous to them. Other kids are very cautious, and they're walking around and looking at everything and afraid of everything. Kind of interesting.
You said things got really bad in your 20s. What did that look like?
Yeah, this is when it got really, really severe really quickly. So I had a bad night's sleep one night. Like just randomly, had trouble falling asleep or something. And then the next day felt, as one does, pretty fatigued and just groggy. And I started to think, oh man, I better make sure that I get a good night's sleep tonight, because this was awful. And then I started thinking, well, what if I like am so in my head thinking about falling asleep that I can't actually fall asleep? Because like you can't fall asleep if you're paying attention to yourself falling asleep. Kind of like it basically was a version of sensory motor or somatic OCD, where the person's hyperfixated on blinking or swallowing or breathing. How do I know I'm
Hmm.
breathing correctly? And you start to pay attention to your breathing, and you can't stop. And I was doing that with sleep. And you can imagine what happened if you're doing that and you're worried about that and you start doing rituals around that. You don't.
Ugh.
So yeah, started getting very little sleep, like every night consistently, and it became the only thing I thought about all the time. It's just a constant 24/7 obsession. And I was doing both like rational things to try to fix it, like, oh, this supplement or this treatment or this, holistic approach or this mindfulness approach or this, and seeking out things that kind of made sense. I was like, oh, I have a sleeping problem. But I was also doing a lot of ritualistic things that made no sense. Like
Yeah.
the drawer is slightly open. I need to close it because this could be at like 2 p.m. But it's like, well, if I don't close it the right way, I won't be able to stop thinking about it. It'll mess with me. It'll make something bad'll happen. So just go ahead, close it. So I'm doing my whole day, is just totally consumed by this, and my night, because I wasn't sleeping very much at all. And that happened for a long time. It went on for a very long time because I didn't know that it was OCD. I didn't realize. I was like, I have a real problem. I can't sleep, and I can't stop thinking about not sleeping. I had no idea that what I was dealing with was OCD.
You probably thought it was just insomnia.
Thought it was really bad insomnia, and that this was
Which, it, yeah. At some point, you dedicated your entire career to studying and treating OCD. Why and when?
Actually, it's very accidental in a way. It's very it's kind of like providence because, like I said, with the sleeping OCD, I actually still at this time didn't know it was OCD, and I went to several therapists trying to get help, and none of them clocked it as OCD actually. Now, whether that was because they didn't know about OCD, which I think that was probably the case, but also because I was very convincing that like, no, this is a real problem, and I could talk about it very rationally. But again, I think it was just a matter of like these people weren't trained, which is so often the case, and why people
Yeah.
suffer so much for so long unnecessarily. And so at the time, I was also training to be a therapist, but not thinking I wanted to work with OCD because I didn't even think I had OCD at the time, right? I thought I had a sleeping problem and just anxiety. And so I got no help with that. I was actually working my first job as a therapist. I was working at a college counseling center. So I was working with college kids and, just helping them with kind of general problems and some real mental health diagnoses. But then my partner and I were going to move to Houston for some reasons. And I had actually taken a training class in CBT and was like, oh, wow, I really like CBT. I think this is what I want to do. This is the kind of intervention I want to use. It makes sense to me. And I can also see how a lot of my issues could be resolved with CBT. And so I wanted to go that route. So I happened to ask a colleague of mine, hey, I'm moving to Houston. Where's a place I could go that is primarily CBT focused? Because I want to get more into that world. And she said, oh, there's the best place for that, the OCD Institute in Texas. Dr. Mackingvale's there. That's their whole thing. And I was like, oh, but OCD, I don't really want to do that. I want to do CBT, but OCD is like, well, I'm going to talk to people about organizing.
Meanwhile, you're struggling with it.
Yes,
That's
yes. And
wild.
I had the same, even though I had been through a graduate program, of course, there was no specific training on OCD. So I'm still thinking OCD is like people wanting things a certain way, wanting to be clean and just totally ignorant. But I was like, well, I'm gonna take the job because I'll get the CBT training and then I can figure out what I really. And when I got here and I started to do the training and learned about OCD, and then I was like, oh my God, this is me. Like, this is what I've been struggling with
Wow.
literally my whole life. And then I became just like on fire with passion
Mm-hmm.
as much as I could. And I was like, Liz was like, you need to slow down on your case. So I was like, no, I want to see as many cases as I can. I want to help people. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's actually kind of a really providential accident, of fate that I ended up doing this work.
Yeah, you became obsessed with those.
That moment, though, when you find out that that's what it is it's a really good feeling mixed with a lot of like, holy crap, I wish I knew this sooner. Right? There's so many emotions that wrap up into that. I remember when I found out and I would tell Liam, I'm like, I don't want to believe that this is true, but it makes too much sense for it not to. And I'm relieved that I have answers now and I can, work on it. But it's an interesting feeling. Do you remember how you felt when you found out?
Yeah, I mean, everything clicked for me. Luckily, I kind of already started to. I mean, I mostly recovered from that sleeping thing. It took many years, but I fully recovered once I figured out what it was. But yeah, no, totally, and it changed everything, and it made so much sense to me. And I tell patients when I work with them, getting the diagnosis is actually the most reassuring thing in a good way. Like we talk about good
Yeah.
reassurance. It's actually because it's like, hey, I'm telling you this is OCD, which should then help you be able to accept the treatment for it. Otherwise, it would be
Right.
so hard. If you didn't actually know you had OCD, you would just go, I have a pedophilia problem. I have a harm problem. I have a sleep problem. I have a all kinds of things problem, right?
Yeah.
And you'll just go down that rabbit hole forever without ever getting relief.
Which is what Liam and I both have done for many years.
And so many people. Yeah. To go back one step, because you mentioned that you and your partner were thinking of moving. So when you were going through the sleep issues, did you have a partner at the time? Were you living together? And what was the experience for the partner?
Not good. That's actually how I got over it, because it got so bad that as a lot of severe OCD, when it's untreated and it just gets worse and worse, right? What I always tell patients with OCD, it's either getting better or it's getting worse. I almost never see someone who's able to just kind of stand still in their OCD and kind of contain it. It's like, nope, you're either feeding it or you're
Yeah.
ignoring it.
So
Which
true.
one is it? And mine was just getting worse and worse and worse to the point where I was thinking all the time about, I think I just probably need to end my life because this is just interminable suffering and there's no way out of this. Or that I was going to lose my mind or like or actually physically die because at some point I just totally stopped sleeping for a very long period of time. And so I stopped working. I took a leave from work because I was so like disabled in this. And that was actually what happened. My partner, he was a teacher at the time, and it was like during COVID kind of. So he was doing a class online. I could hear him. He was at home. I was at home, disabled basically. And one of his students asked him, "Mr. So and so, you seem so sad. Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And then I heard him respond, and he kind of got choked up, and he was like, "No, yeah, I'm just going through something, but it's okay. Like, don't worry about me."
Aw.
And it hit me so hard in that moment. I was like, I am ruining, like, not just my life is ruined by this, but the people that I love and care about the most, my parents, my close friends who were so worried about me, all my colleagues who were like texting me every day, when are you coming back? Are you okay? And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll never sleep again, but I don't care. This isn't the way I want to go out. Like, I am just gonna live my life and let go of all of this. Like, I'm gonna stop trying to figure this out. I'm gonna stop. Like, maybe I never sleep again. I don't care, but I'm not gonna do this to the people around me. And that was what turned me around. Like, from that moment,
Wow.
I called my boss. I was like, I'm coming back to work. She's like, you're not okay. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna do it. I'm
Wow.
to work. And I went back to work. I just started acting like I was normal, even though internally I was like, everything is not okay. But I did it. And then guess what happened? I started sleeping again. Isn't that amazing? Like, when I
Th
put it all up, when I stopped all of all the, the BS rituals and research and everything, wow, look what happened. So
Fake it till you make it.
fake it till you make it. Yeah, I tell people that. And that really is like, that really is an important thing to do.
Is there something that clinicians without lived experience often miss with their patients?
I think that the lived experience thing with clinicians is a little bit overblown, controversial take, right? Being a clinician with lived experience. And I'll tell you why. Because I see, like, if two things. Number one, if you asked me if one of your kids had OCD and you said, who's the best person, right? I want my kid to see the best clinician for OCD. And I think of the 4 or 5 people in my mind, half of them are clinicians that don't have lived experience, right? And half of them do. So it's not a requirement to get really good treatment. And then the second thing is I think sometimes it can actually be an impediment. And what I mean by that is I've seen patients before who are like, well, I have OCD and I only want to go see someone who has OCD, a clinician who has OCD. But there are also bad therapists out there, bad OCD therapists who have OCD. So it's like, just
Right.
because you have a lived experience doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good clinician. And too often I've seen people stick with the clinician who's not helping them, but they're like, well, but they get it. They understand they must be good because they had OCD or they have OCD. And I'm like, no, they're good if they're good. So.
Yeah, right. You can empathize. That doesn't mean that you're good at explaining how to get the help. Got it.
Exactly. And I totally get from a patient perspective, like it is very comforting and nice and you can connect on that level for sure. But I also, for what it's worth, I don't disclose to my patients if I'm open about if they somehow know, because they watch a podcast like this or something and they ask me, of course I'll be honest and say, yeah, I'll answer any question you have, but I don't lead with that. And the reason why is because I want patients to trust what I say because they try it out and see that it works, not because they're like, oh,
Right. Are you mixing your own personal experience with it and being biased? Right.
That's exactly.
That makes sense.
You said something interesting there, Ryan, just now, which was you said they have OCD or they had OCD, past tense. And I wonder how you define yourself right now. Would you say you have OCD or you had OCD? And this will get into that question of whether or not it's curable, which we've had a few times on this show. Liz and I, Dr. Liz Mackingdale, the director of the OCD Institute, and I actually had a debate about this during our episode. And I'm curious how you feel about that.
Yeah, I also Liz and I are kind of on the same page about this, and we have a few other clinicians on our team who also had their own experiences with OCD who feel similarly. Yeah, I mean it's a past tense thing for me. I don't have it anymore. I don't meet criteria. I don't think of myself as having OCD anymore. And yeah, our message is freedom. You can get freedom from this. It doesn't have to be a lifelong thing that you deal with. And I'm so happy about that for me personally, but that's also what I want for all my patients and what I shoot for with them. And I, have lots and lots of patients who, similarly would say, yeah, that was a thing of the past. It's not a part of my life anymore. It's not a part of my daily inner experience anymore.
Help me define that a bit better. For you, you had, of course, your obsession with whether or not you're going to sleep. I'm sure some other subtypes popped up at some point.
Hmm.
Do those thoughts never occur to you anymore? You don't have a bad day with them, like ever? Or is it more that by freedom, you mean, no, they pop up and I have a bad day or whatever it might be, a bad phase, but I'm able to continue with my day, continue with my life, and it doesn't debilitate me the way it used to?
So that's a great question. I would say that in the kind of middle stage of my recovery from OCD, it looked like what you're explaining, which is like I still have these scary thoughts that pop up pretty frequently, and I'm trying really hard to not let them affect me or to not respond to them, to not ritualize, to not avoid, to not go down the rabbit hole with them. But as I kept going, as I kept getting better and better at ignoring those thoughts, at doing the opposite of what they were telling me and urging me, they became less and less frequent to the point where now they really don't show up any more than I would say like a person who's never had OC has, intrusive thought. Like, you go to hold a baby and you're like, oh my God, what if I drop the baby? That's pretty normal. And most people have it and they might even feel a little bit of fear, but they're like, whatever, I'm going to hold the baby. And then after 30 seconds, they're not thinking that anymore.
Quick break. We'll be right back. But first, a word from our sponsor.
The same distressing, unwanted thoughts keep playing over and over in your mind. The same rituals keep eating up your time, holding you back from enjoying your life. You've tried talk therapy before and spent session after session diving into those thoughts, trying to understand them, trying to fix them, but somehow they just get worse. And the shame piles on because you think, why isn't this working? What's wrong with me? If this sounds familiar, here's what you need to know. You are not the problem. You're experiencing something that a lot of people with OCD experience. Getting your life back is possible because OCD is highly treatable. It just requires a completely different approach than other mental health conditions. In fact, standard talk therapy often makes OCD worse because it encourages you to analyze those intrusive thoughts or try to replace them with positive ones. But with OCD, the more attention you give the thoughts, the stickier they become. That's where NoCD comes in. NoCD provides virtual therapy designed specifically for OCD. Every single one of their therapists is extensively trained in a type of therapy called ERP, or exposure and response prevention, which is the most effective treatment available for OCD. And they get their training from world-renowned OCD experts, so they truly understand what you're dealing with, even the stuff that feels impossible to say out loud. In live, face-to-face virtual sessions, your NoCD therapist will teach you how to take the power away from intrusive thoughts so you can live the life you want to live. In between sessions, you'll be able to message your therapist anytime, join dozens of live support groups, and continue your progress with other expert-developed therapy tools. NoCD is also covered by insurance for over 138 million Americans, and their team makes it really simple to get started. Visit nocd.com and book a free 15-minute call. That's nocd.com to learn more and talk to someone who can help, because you deserve treatment that actually works for OCD. And now, back to our show.
There's so many theories out there about what causes OCD. I'm sure you guys have both seen them online. There are a lot of doctors who would say that it's due to gut health and inflammation. We trauma, brain chemistry, genetics. What do you think?
Great question. Yeah. The billion-dollar question. I think that I think we're just way too not there yet. And if being able to conclude with any kind of conclusive certainty, say this is what's going on. All of even the brain studies, we've got some inkling of what's going on, what could be going on, but whenever those studies are replicated or they're kind of more information is put into them, or they compare they increase the sample size or the comparison studies, there are always flaws that come up and there are always limitations and questions. And so from a neurobiological sense, of course it's a brain disorder. Of course there's something going on in your brain, but what is actually happening and is it consistent within and between individuals? We really can't say.
Yeah, because there is a gut-brain axis, right? And so you can argue that it maybe stems in your gut and then it affects your brain. But I guess my question is for people who believe it's due to inflammation, if you're only doing ERP and you're not addressing your gut health and you're getting better, you know what I mean? So like you didn't address your gut health, you would say that you don't have OCD anymore. You only did ERP. So how do you explain that?
Yeah.
Like how would someone arguing that it comes from inflammation when you didn't target your gut health at all? That wasn't even part of your plan.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be impossible to say for sure, but my suspicion would be if you believe that your OCD is caused by your gut health and then it improves, it's almost like the placebo effect, and which is also kind of consistent with CBT. Like CBT is very big on what you believe really affects your interpretation of reality, what you're paying attention to, how you're understanding things. So there are potential ways to explain it. I think, and by the way, I'm very naturalistic. I do all of that. Liz will tell you, Liz makes fun of me because I'm so kind of naturopathic. I want people to have the best gut health possible because good gut health is good for you, right?
Right.
I think where I see the problem happen is that if somebody is chasing gut health as a way to get rid of their OCD,
right,
it can really actually make it worse. Because that kind of goes contrary to what CBT would be asking you to do, the way we would want you to approach your OCD from a CBT.
Well, that's what happened with me. I became so obsessed with the fact that the reason I was performing these compulsions and having all these intrusive thoughts was because of my health, my gut health. So I blamed mold and sure, those things probably were happening and I got tested and positive for toxins and all the thing, but I became so obsessed with fixing that. This is before I even knew I had OCD. So now that I know, I've been diagnosed with OCD, I am on this hunt still, and that's probably my OCD of trying to figure out what is the cause, where did it come from, and I should probably just let that go and accept the fact and still work on my health in a healthy way. But it's interesting to me because if you can choose, remember you said that you decided to just sleep better and that changed everything for you, changed your perspective. You went to work, you were like, I'm not going to give into this anymore, right? And you were in the thick of it. You were it's pretty severe for you.
Yep.
And you go to work, you change that perspective, you fought through it, right? Is there something to be said about not giving in when our cortisol is high and you're stuck in that fight and flight and you're anxious and you're stuck in that loop and you're like, no, I'm going to break it. I'm going to break the loop. I'm going to go do the hard thing. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to show up. You now have lowered that fight or flight response, that cortisol level, and then your gut is going to get better because you're not producing that hormone. So it's like you are lowering that inflammation. And I mean, there's so many ways to look at it. And for me, it's like, just be healthy.
Yeah. It's like when people, and by the way, you and I are similar because I could send you a list, probably many things you've done. I had air filters in every room.
I have one right here.
Yeah, it was insane. I've seen every type of naturopathic, holistic, alternative medicine.
Yeah.
Because I was convinced of the same thing. There's something going on.
Parasites.
Yeah, I went down that rabbit. I've been down many, many of them. I can totally relate. And again, I think all of healthy practices are good. It's like when people come in and say, is yoga and mindfulness going to cure my OCD? I say, no, it's not. But I'm not telling you don't do yoga. Do yoga because yoga is good. Yoga is good because it's good for you. It's not a treatment for OCD. The thing about the cortisol, where I see people go down this rabbit hole, is cortisol's not really bad. It's a normal response. We have stress response. There are people out there.
But when it's chronic, and I feel like OCD people, we experience
But
Yeah.
like people are in that all the time. Wall Street, people on Wall Street, people who work in investment banking, people
Right.
who work in a real estate. I mean, you guys are in where, in LA? I used to live in LA.
Yeah.
You ever met a realtor in LA? Their cortisol is through the roof all the time. They don't have OCD, right?
Alicia's looking for a house in LA right now, and
I
she
mean,
knows
my cortisol is through the roof right now. I'm an actor in LA and it's intense.
See, this is what I want you to hear, because I can't, like, I want you to not have OCD, right? If you're tying not having OCD to you being able to completely eliminate your cortisol ever being spiked, you're fighting against biology. It'll never happen.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
body is designed to spike cortisol to help you. It doesn't feel good, but it's also not dangerous. It's not what's causing your OCD. For my
No, I think the OCD is first and then all that other stuff adds to it and makes it worse. I personally don't think it's a gut related. My gut's the best it's ever been. I have no issues related, and I still have OCD.
Yes. Now you're super healthy with OCD, which is better than being not healthy and having OCD, right?
100%. 100%. I guess, for a lot of us out there, for me, actually, I'll speak for myself. I'm just trying to get to the root cause of it because at some point, whether it's a decision or it's a mental shift or perspective, we would like to be free from it as well. And yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, maybe that's actually a great segue into like how CBT kind of consists.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so you mentioned like I want to get to the root cause of this. So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really we have a lot of different interventions in the world of psychiatric medicine and clinical practice psychology. CBT's been around for a long time, and it has a excuse me, a ton of evidence and literature that it is effective for all kinds of disorders. CBT for OCD actually has one of the highest rates of efficaciousness, of effectiveness, right? Which is like good news for people with OCD. If we can actually identify you, if you can find a therapist who knows what's going on, which is hard, but if we can do that, we actually have this treatment that works really well. And the reason it works well is because it says we don't need to know the root or the cause of your OCD. We know how it's being maintained. The foundational principle of CBT is when we're treating a disorder, we're not looking for cause. We're looking for what are called maintaining factors. What are the things you're doing or the ways you're thinking or the things you believe? There's all kinds of elements that go into this. But basically, what is the pattern you're stuck in, the things you're doing that are keeping this going? We know what's keeping it going, right? It's like if you're driving a car, this is kind of a rough analogy, but you're driving a car and you're like, I want the car to stop. Do you need to know where the car came from, how it was made, how it got there? Or do you just need to know, I need to take my foot off the accelerator?
I do, because I need all the unnecessary details of every situation.
She needs the safety ratings.
Yeah. I need to know the drivers, past drive. Yeah, no, I get that. That makes sense. So you don't need to know that. Maybe the OCD is what's driving the desire to know the root cause.
Probably, yeah, probably.
For me.
Probably, yeah. And also just wanting relief, right? And there's also there is a belief, a misconception that it's going to take a long time to squash, right? And it comes from psychoanalysis, that if someone's experiencing anxiety or OCD, there must be some unresolved thing that is causing this, or a health-related thing, right? But if only it were that simple, right? That would be really nice if we could just figure out what was the one thing that triggered this all and then just talk about it, would go away. But the reality is, no, there are things that you're doing, not you, but in general, right? Maybe, but that people are doing with OCD that are keeping them stuck. And if we can identify those things, change those things, give them new ways to respond, the OCD will stop.
I want to get into the CBT and how ERP falls within that, but I just want to touch quickly on what Alicia has been saying about trying to find the root cause, is that OCD wants certainty, right? And this is where Alicia hates one of my responses to some of the intrusive thoughts she has. My response often will be maybe, maybe not. And she's like, no, I can't accept maybe when the outcome would be catastrophic. Like, maybe this horrible thing will happen to me, maybe not. But the point of the maybe, maybe not is to tell your OCD, I'm not going to solve this. There is no certainty of anything in life. And the sooner I accept that and learn to live with the discomfort of that, the better off I'll be. The maybe isn't like, diminishing the significance of the thing that is causing you fear. Like for you, Ryan, the thought that you might never sleep again, like that's pretty bad. You would die. You would literally die from that. But the maybe not is, again, it's challenging your mind to be like, you can't have certainty on this, and you need to learn to live with the distress.
I think that's very well said. A lot of people theorize kind of OCD is a difficulty with accepting uncertainty, any amount of it around one particular thing, right? Which is interesting to think about how people with OCD, they accept a lot of uncertainty around a lot of other things in life, but not certain things that they want. But yeah, if you can accept, I can't know the answer to this. It's an unsolvable problem, or it's an unanswerable question, and I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to attempt to do that. That helps you move forward, for sure.
Alicia, can you tell us why that triggers you so much?
When you say maybe,
Yeah.
I'm always one step ahead. I think about scenarios and I try to predict outcomes. So if I don't have like a response to something to lead me in one direction and I'm in that like gray area, it's very unsettling to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I don't know. I've always needed to know. I need to know the plan. I need to know where we're going. I need to know how much time you're expected to spend on something. Like I think it's because I crave safety. I need to feel a certain way and feel like I'm prepared for whatever scenario may come up. And if you give me a direction, then I can plan accordingly. Otherwise, it's too unpredictable and feels too unsafe. So I would rather I would rather a response, even if it were negative and not in my favor, than nothing at all.
Yeah.
Because I need to know so I can prepare.
I had this experience recently, Brian, where I became convinced that I had colorectal cancer. And health OCD has been, it comes and goes. It's not my main subtype, but I've had a little bit of it. And Alicia has been privy to some of it. But I had this fear that I had colorectal cancer. And so I was texting Alicia about it, like, and the way I would put it is if you put it in certain terms. So I'd be like, no, I am dying of colorectal cancer, and I want you to know that I'm dying of it. And then Alicia was like, you don't really have colorectal cancer. And I was like, maybe not. And she was like, no, you can't say maybe you have colorectal cancer.
Like you don't. Go find out. But yeah, that's yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. A couple things here, right? Is you even being able to, sometimes when we say it definitively, like I have colorectal cancer, people will laugh. You'll see them laugh, and you're like, why? And you're like, well, I guess it is kind of silly because I'm guessing there's no evidence of that, right? Because if there were,
right, there's no.
So
he's just decided that morning he woke up and had cancer.
My stomach didn't feel great. And
yeah, you had to fart, Liam. Like, what do you mean? You go from feeling gassy to I have cancer.
There you go, right? So when you were able to laugh about it, because OCD is so extreme and bizarre and kind of ridiculous, right? So sometimes if you can get someone like, okay, you're worried you're a pedophile. Why do you say I'm a pedophile? And then they say like, oh, that's silly, right? They can see that if you laugh at it, they can move on. The thing, your point, Alicia, about the maybe not. I actually shy away from that. Sometimes I use that with patients. I shy away because exactly what you said, which is that for some people, like if they go, well, maybe I'm a horrible person and maybe I did something so awful. It really doesn't matter what the fear is. And you say, well, can we just say maybe not? And they go, well, how could you ask me? Like, even if there's some possibility that this is true, you want me to be okay with that? Well, that would mean I am a monster or something. Right. So which is easier for people. What I found is easier for people to accept is to say, can we say, yeah, this is probably your OCD. We can't know for sure, maybe it's not, but like you have OCD, you're here to work on OCD. Can we say this is probably your OCD? And will that help you then be able to let it go and move on? And I find that people are that's much more acceptable.
I love that.
More palatable to be like, yeah, I do have a long track record of having really extreme, bizarre thoughts that never end up being true. I guess I'll treat this one that way too, right?
Yes, I love that. That's so helpful for me.
There you go.
I like that approach. Maybe not. I wanted to get back to the CBT questions, so cognitive behavioral therapy. Where does ERP fall in that? It's kind of under the umbrella of CBT, right?
Yes, exactly. And this is great. You're kind of prompting a few important questions here. So ERP is practiced in a lot of ways as a standalone therapy, although I would argue it shouldn't be. Because it is a part of CBT. It was developed as part of the CBT theoretical foundation, theoretical framework, and as a clinical intervention, right? It was developed for OCD, but really as a variation of exposure therapy for other types of disorders like phobias. Someone comes in, I'm terrified of dogs. I don't want to leave my house. My kid's terrified of dogs. She won't go to school because she's worried she's going to be attacked by a dog. I have panic attacks. So exposure therapy is a behavioral approach that CBT developed a long time ago that works very well for lots of different types of anxiety and phobic disorders. ERP is this kind of special one developed for like a tweak of that variation of that for OCD. But we should still be delivering ERP within this greater CBT framework. Otherwise, you're going to miss you could, not always, but you could miss some important things that like tools that we're leaving on the table. For example, other elements of CBT that can help people with OCD that if we're just kind of hammering this ERP without taking it into a broader context of like what are the maintaining factors, not all of them are necessarily avoidance and therefore need exposure. There may be some other things that we can look at that could really help you.
Could you give an example of what that would look like? So I'll give you an example of what I'm working on right now in ERP, which is we've taken some of my main subtypes, developed exposures for them. I learned to sit with the distress. I do the response prevention messages, your typical ERP framework. And what we've determined over time, my therapist and I, is that really the root kind of core thing, the center of all of this is this fear that I'm just not a good person and that I'm not worthy and that I'm not attractive, not smart enough, all the stuff that you think comes with low self-esteem. And so now we've moved to working on that core thing, right? We've kind of attacked the subtypes. I've made good progress on those, not free of them, but good progress. And now we're kind of working at that thing. Is that kind of where you're coming back to that CBT framework of helping you rethink not just your individual thought patterns, but kind of how you think of yourself more broadly?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think what you're getting at or what your therapist is getting at is more of this core fear approach of like, let's go for the thing that really is, common to all of the different OCD triggers you've had. And if we go after that, if that's really the thing that shows up across the board, that will give us the most bang for our buck. And I agree with that approach. What I'm talking about is there are other things in CBT. So, for example, there's something called like an attention bias. You've probably heard of this, So I don't know what you guys do for work, but like, for example, if you're an architect, when an architect walks into a building, what do they naturally probably pay attention to? They notice the design and they notice, different ornamentations and different things and, the way it's laid out and whatnot. Am I noticing that when I walk into a building? Probably not. I'm not an architect, right? I don't have that attention bias. If I have OCD, if I have contamination OCD and I walk into the building, what's the first thing I'm paying attention to? Where there might be contamination. If I have pedophilia OCD, what's the first thing I'm going to pay attention to? Probably if they're children, right? So that's an example of like, and by the way, everyone has attention biases. You don't have to have OCD or a disorder. We all have attention biases. Part of CBT is helping people identify what are you kind of unnecessarily or, excessively paying attention to that's actually making this worse, right? If I told you, when you get in the car to go to work, if you are able to write down, note every time you see a red truck, I'll give you $1,000,000. You better believe your brain is going to be paying attention to the trucks, whereas it wasn't a minute ago, right? So something like that. Another example I'll give you would be, Alicia, earlier you were talking about why you feel like you can't accept maybe, and you said something like, well, I'm someone who I need to know in advance what's going to happen so I can properly prepare. I can't really be okay with something not knowing what's going to happen, right? That's a
Right.
belief you have. It's probably been around for a long time, right? Is that the truth? CBT would say it's not, you really believe it, and it's kind of almost become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Can we change that about you? I think we can. Is that also probably, I would argue that's actually not your OCD. It's something that feeds your OCD, though. It makes it harder for your OCD to go away. When
Oh,
stuff
interesting.
like that, like when I'm doing a session with someone and they say things like that from a CBT perspective, an alarm goes off. You go, oh, wow. I see one more thing that's contributing to her staying stuck in OCD. She has this really fixed belief that she needs all the information ahead of time or else she's not going to be okay. We can talk about that. We can target that. We can challenge that. We can create experiments to, right in that.
Isn't that getting to the root cause of it?
I
In
would
some sense, because we're going, like let's dive into that a little bit. So my need for safety comes probably from my trauma of growing up in a really traumatic household with abusive parents who were dependent, whatever. I lacked that safety. I didn't have anyone to comfort me. And so for me, fear surrounds me in every aspect of my life, right? Like I'm going to die, my kids are going to die. Because I live a really beautiful life now, I fear that something is going to come take it away because isn't that getting to the root cause of why I search for those things I seek comfort and then that creates the OCD?
I would say you're really close. I would say it's not the root cause. It's one of the causes. It's one of the maintaining factors, right? It's definitely a big part of the process here. And it's absolutely something that I would want to talk to you about and hear more about
Yeah.
and explore and figure out all the ways it shows up right now. Not so much
Right.
exploring what we would talk a little bit about what it was like growing up and how that played out, but really we'd be focusing on how is that showing up now for you? All the different ways. Some of them OCD, some of them I bet not. And I would want to target all of that. And you would see it translate into you better being able to resist compulsions, to trust yourself, to put yourself in situations where you're going to challenge that. So I'm really, really big on like, hey, ERP is the treatment for OCD if it's delivered within its proper greater framework, which is a cognitive behavioral uh, lens and theoretical foundation.
Right, because we're just rewiring that thing, whatever it is in ERP, that you can do it and you are still safe.
Yes.
Right. And it's just because, yeah. Okay.
You can do things that your mind tells you can't,
Yeah.
you're actually, both of you guys are evidence is you're successful, have families, healthy, right? Like you are way more capable than your mind tells you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to prove that to yourself explicitly, intentionally on.
Yeah.
What do you do with the idea that even self-affirmation? So at the end of my sessions, I'm supposed to say some words of affirmation about myself. I am worthy of this, that sort of thing. Those actually feel like exposures themselves to me. Because when I say them, I'm like, I don't really believe that. So this is just an exposure. Where do you stand on that? Do you like to end a session with, listing gratitude and saying some nice things about yourself? I'm just not totally sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, not as a rule for sure. I mean, definitely, I think people with a kind of moral scrupulosity or like I'm a bad person being their core fear, saying those things is a good exposure. I would say more importantly though is like how are you treating yourself throughout the day though? Like as you go through the day, are you behaving like you're a good person or are you behaving like you're maybe a bad person, right? And I see that all the time. And behaviors really are what affects change. And so I want you to say those affirmations, but I want you to live as if that were true. It is true. Alicia and I know that just talking to you. It's like, oh, this is a good person, giving you some reassurance, right? But no, but we know that you'll never believe it until you start.
We find out he has a whole nother family and a marriage going on in another country. This Justin, he's been lying to everyone about who he is. You guys, I've had that thought. I'm like, what if I don't actually have OCD and this podcast is just a big I'm just a big actress.
It's such an OCD thought, right?
Yeah, sorry, I interrupt so much.
To
That's
doubt
the ADHD in me.
to doubt the diagnosis. No, that's
Yes.
that's when I know someone really has OCDs. They're like, but what if I don't have OCD? I'm like, all right, great. Now we know it's confirmed.
Confirmed.
Yeah, I text Liam that all the time. I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yes, period.
Well, sometimes I will say to Alicia, yes, we do have it. And then other times I've said, maybe, maybe not.
Maybe. And then I'm like, no, I definitely do. I didn't need to ask you for that. I definitely do. Yeah.
Ryan, if someone listening right now feels stuck, you have felt stuck. So Alicia and I have certainly felt stuck in our lives. What would you recommend in addition to just reaching out to the OCD Institute?
Yeah. No, I mean, this is what drives me, knowing that there are still so many people out there who are very stuck and feeling hopeless. But what I want people to know is that you can get better. This doesn't have to be on you. Life can be better. There are people out there who are going through what you're going, and there are people that know how to help you get out of it.
Ryan, that was such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you on Instagram or any other outlets that you have?
You can find me at the OCD Institute Texas, our website, and Instagram, OCDI Texas. I'm on there, clips of me, and please reach out and be in touch with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the OCD Confessional. Be sure to follow this show so you get new episodes. You can subscribe to us on YouTube or find us on Instagram and TikTok at the OCD Confessional.